and welcome to Project HR, a podcast dedicated to building better workplaces. My name is Beth Pilgreen, and I'm your host. It's January of a brand new year and a brand new decade. So what better time to try and look ahead at the year before us and consider how human resources may change in 2020. We've asked Andrea Hoffer, the founder of AHA Business Consulting, as well as an expert consultant, trainer, recruiter, and entrepreneur to join us today to help us try to anticipate what trends might surface in the coming year. Welcome to Project HR, Andrea.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, we're so glad to have you too. Well, I'd love to begin by taking a quick look back. What were some of the big takeaways in HR for 2019, in your opinion, and how can we progress further in 2020?
You know, the last few years, but especially the last year, we all know technology just keeps growing and growing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is certainly true in the HR realm. Technology has just come into every part of HR, from making sure you keep compliant to recruiting, to onboarding effectively, and even training and holding employees accountable. And I think that's just going to continue to be a focus and something that's really talked about. And how do we do this successfully?
Right.
You know, another trend that we've heard this past year a lot is about millennials. And I know you had a previous guest who talked a lot about millennials in the workplace, and I learned a lot from it. I really enjoy listening to your podcast.
Oh, great. Thank you.
And I think we're still going to hear a lot about millennials, and then especially Gen Z, and you know what's important to them, because they're entering the workplace now, and will soon be a big majority. But the other segment that's not talked about a lot is the over 50 segment. And they're predicting by 2024 that 25% of the workforce will be over 55.
Wow.
And I think that's something that we really need to consider as we're looking at our workforce. And then, of course, you can't really not look at 2019 or 2020 going further without thinking about the gig economy, independent contractors, and how that's becoming such a big part of the workforce, and even just remote workers who are also either part of the gig economy or are even W-2 employees.
So, okay, that's wonderful. Those are some of the things that are going on around HR in our last year and coming up, impacting our jobs. Let's talk about something that's going on within HR, and that's the increased presence of AI and our ever-changing opinions of it. In your opinion, do you think that artificial or augmented intelligence will continue to be a controversial part of HR?
To say very simply, yes. I think it will continue to be a big part of HR, and it will continue to be a controversial part. I think AI is great. It's taking a lot of those automated, repetitive tasks off of the HR professionals and allowing them to focus more on the tasks that take more thought and that are strategic. And my hope is that it will also put more time for the leaders and the HR professionals to be more face to face and to interact more on the people front. Because I think that's where the controversial part often comes in, is that we're automating so many tasks that we're taking these tasks off of the leaders or the HR leaders' plates, as far as onboarding and training, and even just predicting if the employees are happy or thinking about leaving. And what's important is that we don't forget these are great tools to help us, but we still need to check in.
Yes.
We still need that people-to-people interaction and build relationships and communicate. So as long as we don't rely so heavily on the AI that it takes that people aspect out, I think it's going to continue to be a great part of HR. It's just making sure it's used properly. And I know also the other thing that comes up a lot about AI is the concern that it's eliminating jobs. And I don't necessarily think that is true. Technology has been changing at a rapid pace for many years now. And while it may eliminate some jobs, it always creates other jobs because we always will need some sort of human aspect
Sure.
to drive it. So I'm not too concerned about that part of it.
Well, and if it helps with employee efficiency too, so that you can have more face time, I can't really see the negative there. I know that it has been very controversial and, people have different opinions, but exactly what you're saying, giving executives at the top more face time. We've talked to a number of guests that have many proven statistics that say that when employees, when they get to engage with their higher ups and they feel valued, it makes them want to stay and it makes them want to do a better job.
Right, exactly. And what I hear from candidates and employees over and over is I just want to know that my manager
Mhm.
cares. Doesn't just care about my output, but cares about me as a
Right.
person. And I live in the recruiting world most of the day, and that's what I hear from candidates. And given the unemployment rate, what I hear over and over again of why people left jobs was just because they didn't think their manager cared about
Mhm.
them, and they felt they never listened to
Mhm.
them, and they weren't respected.
Mhm.
And that's you know they have a choice of jobs out there now. We need to be focusing in on what else do they need.
Okay, in the same automated vein, chatbots have become a familiar element of online life, and we've heard that they also have the potential to assist HR with onboarding support. In your opinion, do you see this happening in 2020?
Oh, yes. I mean, again, it's an aspect of AI that helps to take those tasks off of the leader's plate. And some of these are repetitive, and in many ways, chat boxes will help a great deal with onboarding because we know things won't be forgotten. We know the chat boxes could help walk new hires through paperwork and review all the company policies or even the history of the company and more about their department. And these are all important things for new hires to learn. And sometimes when you do have the people element, unless we have a good solid checklist that we're following, which I highly recommend, we might forget one step, which could hurt the success of that employee. So chat boxes are great in that regard. They're also great for training and doing pop-up quizzes. I think, again, a little bit of the concern, like I mentioned earlier, is chat boxes are also being used as check ins. And not just check ins for training, but also check ins for, how are things going? And if there isn't a human being
Yeah.
on the other side of that, why bother?
That's exactly what I was just thinking. I don't think that I would respond as warm and, "Oh, I feel very loved and respected here by a robot."
So, again, technology, I'm a huge fan of using technology, especially when it comes to HR and recruiting and onboarding, as long as it's used properly and you're not losing that
Sure, yeah.
human interaction part of it. And I do want to just add, I didn't mention in the previous question about AI, one of my really, it's almost a pet peeve, I guess, in when it comes to
Mhm.
AI and recruiting is we get so many resumes where half a page of keywords related to skills is on there because candidates are so concerned that the first eyes that are going to see their resume is a robot who's basically
Oh.
going to say yes or no on whether or not they pick out a skill. And if it's written exactly how the robot was programmed to look for it, so that's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. And even though 90% of what we do at AHA is recruiting, we still eyeball every single resume.
I love that. Well, skill gaps are becoming increasingly more troubling to HR, with companies addressing the problem with learning and development programs for employees. Andrea, do you see anything new on the 2020 horizon that may help bridge these gaps?
I think this is an area that a lot of employers have tried to address in 2019. And SHRM did a study in 2019 and found, like you mentioned, that employers are investing a lot more in learning and development and training. They're also partnering with educational institutions to try to fill some of the gap, and also focusing on recruiting
Hmm.
from more diverse talent pools. Um, what they found is a lot of these steps that they're taking is really not helping the situation.
How so? Can you elaborate into that?
They're just not seeing as many candidates out there who have the skills that are needed to fill jobs. And sometimes my question is, do they actually have to have certain skills? I think what you're seeing is a little bit of a shift in employers saying, okay, well, maybe attitude and culture fit are more important at this point, and just the capacity to learn the skills. And, if that's the case, then it opens up so many more pools of candidates for them. And you're also, my feeling is, if you find somebody who has a good work ethic, is willing to learn, has the capacity to learn, is interested in doing what you need them to do and learning what you need them to do, and fits your organizational culture, well, then put the time and money in to training that skill, and giving them the experience they need, and then put the time and money in to continuing to make them happy, and engaging them in the company. And some of that is increasing compensation. And one of the things that SHRM found was, well, some of these areas that employers are really investing in, that it's just making a little bit of a dent in it. One of the things that actually helps a lot is increasing compensation. Um, and, you maybe you don't offer as high a compensation when they first start, but once they've reached the skill level that you need them, well, then that's an incentive, one, for them to get there, and two, then that's a way to keep them instead of taking that skill set and going somewhere else.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I think that's what a lot of employers are seeing. But again, if that is the approach they're going to take, then they need to make sure
Yeah.
they have a good training program in place, because they can't say, yes, we're going to train, but then not have a very good, effective training program.
Let me ask you this. Remote work has certainly become a staple for the modern workforce. Do you see its use changing in the coming year in any way?
I see it just growing and growing.
I do too.
It's become so much of a way of life. You just see it by the co-working spaces popping up everywhere. It's a huge business now. And and I think one of the reasons for that, of course, technology is, a huge driving force, but I think more than that, people want flexibility. We talk so much about work-life balance, and everybody has a different definition of what work-life balance looks like. My feeling is, when you really drill it down, it just comes down to flexibility. It's not that people want to work
Hmm.
less, it's not that they're lazy, it's that they just want to work on their own terms. And they'll still get plenty of work done and be extremely productive. They just want to do it in their way. And co-working and remote work plays into that. You can work with the rhythms that work with your body. And we talk so much now about mind body connection and being healthy and wellness, and I think remote work really plugs into that.
I do too, and I think that that's one of the most attractive qualities, I think, when a candidate is looking for a new place of work, is if that is an option, working from home or working from wherever they choose.
Oh, definitely. If we post a job and it says remote on it,
Right.
the number of applications, I mean, of
Mhm.
course, it's going to open up geographic areas, so it's going to increase the candidate data just by that. But even if you don't take that as a factor, if it just says you can work from home 1 day a week, so many more people are going to be interested in that position.
I bet. I mean, I, for one, would be one of those people.
Me too.
Just as a reminder, you're listening to the Project HR podcast. I'm your host, Beth Pilgreen, and our guest today is Andrea Hoffer with AHA Business Consulting. Andrea, let's talk about something that once got a lot of buzz, but in 2019 kind of fell by the wayside, and that's employee wellness programs. Is there a place for them in 2020, in your opinion?
I think there is, but I also think it looks different. We just talked about remote working, and I
Hmm.
think that plays a lot into wellness. And, employees will look at having the opportunity to work on their terms and remotely as part of their wellness. Um, I do think we'll still see some other wellness programs growing, maybe finding other ways to ingrain them into their companies. Maybe it will have more of that mind body connection. It's not seen as so out there anymore.
Hmm.
It's seen as important, and plugging into that, we may start to see in some companies and even small business. Even just offering to pay for part of a gym membership is a great way to instill employee wellness into your team. It doesn't have to be an elaborate program,
Sure.
but just offering that opportunity. We might see it more as almost a menu of options you can take advantage of, and again, allowing for that individualized approach to it.
Sure. No, I like that. I like the menu idea. It gets my wheels turning as to what else could be on that menu. Okay, well, another buzzword in recent years is gamification, and that is showing no signs of slowing this year, is it?
No, and it's funny. Gamification started to become talked about a lot in terms of technology, but I've seen gamification happening for years before technology started taking advantage of it. I used to do it with my team in one of my first jobs. We had a little star system for different contests, and it's a fun way to motivate people. People love friendly competition, and it takes advantage of that. I think all the new technology software programs that are out there, just it makes it a little easier. I think you just also still have to make sure it's part of the day to day culture and not just you kind of look at your dashboard on your phone or your screen to see where you're at. You still want to make sure there's some buzz in the workplace around it to make sure there's that fun aspect of it.
Yeah, I love competition myself with employees. Well, what do you think is on the compliance front for 2020? Are there any changes we should be looking out for?
There's so much going on in the compliance front that I think it's difficult to pinpoint anything. And I think one of the things we're seeing a lot right now is a lot of new laws on the state level. And that is affecting, of course, companies that are in certain states, but it's also affecting companies that are in multi states. And so then they have to change their policies or their approach so that it's uniform throughout their company, but also recognizing that they're staying in compliance with every state that they're in. And I always recommend to my clients to have a partner in an employer attorney as somebody that they can really, or an HR person who is really focused on compliance and up to date with what the laws are and how to work within them, because I think it's something that's hard to stay on top of, and even just hard to know, well, how do I stay compliant and still run my business effectively. So I think in that area it's very important to have a good resource. I also think there's a lot of talk and a lot of laws around pay equity, so we'll probably continue to see more in that area. We're also seeing a lot around independent contractors. There's new laws that were implemented this year in California around that, which is uh, creating some structure concerns for some companies in California. So it's important to stay on top of these laws and to understand how that affects your business model and how you work day to day.
Yes, absolutely. That is a great thing to keep in mind. And lastly, Andrea, in your opinion, how important is the employee experience in 2020? And what can we do to help build employee-centric cultures in our companies?
It's extremely important. And I think we've been talking today, it's come up a few times, about making sure you don't remove that human aspect. But I think it's even more important to have even more of that human relationship in there. And it all comes back to communication. And the communication, between coworkers, communication between leaders and the people that they lead. And it's on every front. It's on, do they have the resources to do their job effectively? And do they know what that looks like? Do they know what the expectations are of them? And it's funny, when we talk about culture and making your employees happy, you've heard so much about ping pong tables and break rooms and
Yes.
food. And really, studies have shown that's very low on the list
Hmm.
for what employees are looking for. They really want to know that they can be successful. They want to know that they're going to be appreciated. They want to know that there's room to move up um, and grow. And they want to know that they're going to be respected as people and that their employers understand they have a life outside of work, but that they still will be successful at work. And they just they want to know that they're not just a cog. They
Right.
want to know how what they do in the workplace every day contributes to the overall mission of the company. And whether or not the employees are formulating it in that way in their minds, that is what is in their heart. Everybody wants to feel needed. And I think that is the most important part of building this, what you're calling an employee centric culture, is making sure everybody at the company knows they're needed, knows how they're needed, and is really given the tools to be successful.
The tools to feel needed and to feel valued. Yeah, I think all of what you're saying is super important. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. I really appreciate your time. And 2020 sounds like it could be a year full of change and lots of challenges too, which, as we know, isn't a bad thing. Thank you for giving us some perspective on the new year, and I, for one, am looking forward to it. But Andrea, we're not done yet because it is time for our lightning round questions. And these are questions we ask every guest of the podcast. And beware, the first question is always a little silly. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. Topic showdown. Today, we've been talking about 2020, and inevitably, at the start of a new year, the topic turns to resolutions. In your opinion, Andrea, which of these resolutions are you least likely to follow? To lose 10 pounds or to do yoga once a week?
Well, those are two of my resolutions. But the truth is, somebody said about a month ago, somebody had mentioned this, and I can't remember who. I think I heard it in one of my entrepreneur groups, but that, if you're not taking care of yourself, then there's nobody to take care of your company. And I just think that is so true. So I am going to say that I am going to meet both of those resolutions.
Oh, yes, you are. I love that. I need to write down some resolutions. I haven't even done that yet. Okay, what's the worst job interview question that you personally have ever been asked?
I hate, and I know hate's a strong word, but the question, tell me about yourself, which I know, we used to ask years ago. It was just a standard first question. And the truth is, it's just too broad. And, we talked about compliance earlier. It could easily start bringing up some personal topics that you're really not allowed to discuss in an interview. And even though you didn't ask it specifically, you opened it up for that opportunity to happen. And I'm a I'm a big believer in really knowing exactly what you're trying to find out by asking a question. And I don't know what you're trying to find out by asking that. And I don't even know how to answer it, to be honest.
Yeah, there are so many directions that question could go in. Okay, note to self, don't ask that. Got it. What is your favorite thing about working in business consulting?
Oh, the people. It was funny. I was talking to a friend last night who I've known since we were teenagers. And I was just saying to her how much I enjoy what I'm doing. And because so much of our business is now switched to recruiting and placement, I just love matching up the right candidate with the right employer and seeing that blossom. The way we approach it is we partner with our clients for a while. It's not just a one-time placement. So I often get to work with the candidates that I've placed.
That's cool.
Because then they're in leadership positions and then they're hiring other people. And it's just so cool to see, hey, a year ago, I remember interviewing you, and it's just really neat to see you in action. And I just love that.
Yeah, it seems like it would be very gratifying.
It is.
Yeah, especially when they move up. That's got to make you feel so proud.
Yeah, it is. It does.
Oh, that's awesome. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I've probably heard this many, many times, but I often need to be reminded of it. And that's just move. Just move forward. Whatever happens, we all have challenges in life and business and, in anything. And, we just have to pick ourselves up and keep moving. We can't get lost in that challenge and make that stop us. And I remind myself of that every day.
It's really good. Who or what inspires you?
Oh, my parents. Both of my parents, have really accomplished a lot. My dad didn't grow up with a lot of money, and he went to college, he went to law school, and really made a lot out of himself. And my mom, was a Holocaust survivor and didn't have the best childhood, and she just, she made a lot of herself as well and was a business owner. They both were business owners. We used to have a magnet on our refrigerator that said, because it was just my sister and I, and it said, "Don't tell your daughters to marry a doctor or lawyer, tell them to be one."
That's great.
And not that they were trying to push us towards any type of profession. They always have just supported us in whatever crazy idea we come up with. And both of us have come up with some crazy ideas. But to just be, the best that we are. And, I just always look back on where they came from and what they created for their lives. And, I've had it that, a million times better. I was very lucky. And so that just inspires me every day.
It inspires me, and I want to do another podcast on your parents. I want to know everything about them now.
Oh, I could talk about them for a while.
That's great. Well, Andrea, thank you so much again for joining us today on this week's episode of Project HR.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you inviting me on.
Absolutely. To our listeners and subscribers, thanks again for tuning in. And as always, I'd like to remind everyone to grab the episode companion for this episode at projectionsinc.com/podcast. If you think you might like to be on Project HR or know someone who might be a great guest, feel free to email us at projecthr@projectionsinc.com. We are always on the lookout for new ideas. Finally, we'd love for you to rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your content. Your ratings help more people find us online, so thank you in advance for helping us grow. That's it from me for now. Let's make it a great day at work.